How can one talk about understanding and not understanding a proposition? Surely it is not a proposition until it's understood. Does it make sense to point to a clump of trees and ask, do you understand what this clump of trees says? In normal circumstances, no. But couldn't one express a sense by an arrangement of trees? Couldn't it be a code? One would call propositions clumps of trees when understood. Others, too, that one didn't understand, provided one supposed the man who planted them had understood them. Doesn't understanding only start with a proposition, with a whole proposition? Can you understand half a proposition? Half a proposition is not a whole proposition. But what the question means can perhaps be understood as follows. Suppose a knight's move in chess was always carried out by two movements of the piece, one straight and one oblique. Then it could be said, in chess there are no half knight's movements, meaning the relationship of half a knight's move to a whole knight's move is not the same sort of relationship as that of half a bread roll to a whole bread roll. We want to say that it is not a difference of degree. It is strange that science and mathematics make use of propositions, but have nothing to say about understanding those propositions. We regard understanding as the essential thing, and signs as something inessential. But in that case, why have the signs at all? If you think that it is only so as to make ourselves understood by others, then you are very likely looking on the signs as a drug, which is to produce in other people the same condition as my own. Suppose that the question is, what do you mean by that gesture? And the answer is, I mean you must leave. The answer would not have been more correctly phrased. I mean what I mean by the sentence, you must leave. In attacking the formalist conception of arithmetic, Frisch says more or less this. These petty explanations of the signs are idle once we understand the signs. Understanding would be something like seeing a picture from which all the rules followed, or a picture that makes them all clear. But Frisch does not seem to see that such a picture would itself be another sign, or a calculus to explain the one written to us. What we call understanding a language is often like the understanding we get of a calculus when we learn its history or its practical application. And there too we meet an easily surveyable symbolism instead of one which is strange to us. Imagine that someone had originally learned chess as a writing game and was later shown the interpretation of chess as a board game. In this case, to understand means something like to take in as a whole. If I give anyone an order, I feel to be quite enough to give him signs. And if I am given an order, I should never say, this is only words. And if I have got to get behind the words, and when I have asked someone something and he gives me an answer, I am content. That was just what I expected. And I don't raise the objection, but that's a mere answer. But if you say, how am I to know what he means when I see nothing but the signs he gives? Then I say, how is he to know what he means when he has nothing but the signs either? What is spoken can only be explained in language. And so in this sense, language itself cannot be explained. Language must speak for itself. One can say that meaning drops out of language because what a proposition means is told by yet another proposition. What did you mean by those words? Did you mean those words? The first question is not a mere, more precise specification of the second. The first is answered by a proposition replacing the proposition, which wasn't understood. The second question is like, did you mean that seriously or as a joke? Compare. Did you mean anything by that gesture? If so, what? In certain of their application, the words understand, mean, refer to a psychological reaction, while hearing, reading, uttering, etc. a sentence. In that case, understanding is the phenomenon that occurs when I hear a sentence in a familiar language and not when I hear a sentence in a strange language. Learning a language brings about the understanding of it, but that belongs to the history of the past, of the reaction. The understanding of a sentence is as much something that happens to me as is the hearing of a sentence. It accompanies the hearing. I can speak of experiencing a sentence. I am not merely saying this, I mean something by this. When we consider what is going on in us, when we mean and don't just say words, it seems to us as if there were something coupled to the words, which otherwise would run idle, as if they connected with something in us. Understanding a sentence is more akin to understanding a piece of music than one might think. Why must these bars be played just so? Why do I want to produce just this pattern of variation in loudness and tempo? I would like to say, because I know what it's all about. But what is it all about? I should not be able to say. For explanation, I can only translate the musical picture into a picture in another medium, and let the one picture throw light on the other. The understanding of a sentence can also be compared with what we might call the understanding of a picture. Think of a still life picture and imagine that we were unable to see it as a spatial representation and saw only patches and lines on the canvas. We could say, in that case, we do not understand the picture, but we say the same thing in a different sense when, although we see the picture spatially, we do not recognize the spatial objects as familiar things like books, animals, and bottles. Suppose the picture is a genre picture, and the people in it are about an inch long. If I had ever seen real people of that size, I would be able to recognize them in the picture and regard it as a life-size representation of them. In that case, my visual experience of the picture would not be the same as the one I have when I see the picture in the normal way, as a representation in miniature, although the illusion of spatial vision is the same in each case. However, acquaintance with real, inch-high people is put forward here only as one possible cause of the visual experience, except for that the experience is independent. Similarly, it may be that only someone who has already seen many real cubes can see a drawn cube spatially. But the description of the spatial visual presentation contains nothing to differentiate a real cube from a painted one. The different experiences I have when I see a picture, first one way and then another, are comparable to the experience I have when I read a sentence with understanding and without understanding. Recall what it is like when someone reads a sentence with a mistaken intonation which prevents him from understanding it, and then realizes how it is to be read. To see a watch as a watch, i.e. as a dial with hands, is like seeing Orion as a man striding across the sky.